Good evening all, and welcome. To everyone, thank you so much for leaving comments. Yesterday we were getting really close with 721. Can we do it today? Can we hit that magic 1k? It would be really amazing if we did. So, before the video begins, feel free to drop a comment with how much you're gonna like it, or not like it. But anyway, without further ado, it's time to get comfortable and let the darkness take control. During my freshman year of college in New Hampshire, a girl in my dorm hall accidentally caused a small dorm room fire by leaving popcorn in too long at about 3 a.m. We all had to evacuate, and the fire trucks came and the RAs made a pretty big stink about it. The girl who lit the fire was the subject of many yik-yak jokes, and I felt bad for her, because she really wasn't attractive, and she looked pathetically lonely, and plus causing microwave fires seemed like a pretty innocent mistake for such harsh comments. A couple of days after the incident, I saw her in the restaurant hall, and made casual small talk by asking her how things were poppin', and kind of just checking up on her because I felt bad. She laughed, and that was kind of it. A conversation of about 2 minutes. Fast forward to a week later, and I hear a knock at my dorm door, and it's the same girl who I am now going to refer to as Popcorn. She comes literally running into my room with no hesitation. I didn't even tell her my room number, and at the time, I just figured she just saw me go in there once, because she didn't even know my name at this point. It takes me a second to realize that she is in full-blown tears. There is now a stranger on my bed in tears, and I'm just like, ugh. So I counsel her like the bleeding heart I am, and ask her what's wrong. She tells me that one of the dining hall cooks sexually assaulted her, and the college wouldn't fire him, and she was suffering emotionally because of it. Being a victim of assault myself, I really sympathized with her situation, and gave her my phone number in case she needed help walking to the dining hall with a safety net and whatnot. I don't take sexual assault lightly. The night after our conversation in my room, I got a call from her to walk her down to the dining hall, because that same cook that assaulted her was working that day. I walked her down to get food, and she lit up like a glow stick, and a whole new person emerged. It didn't matter that her assailant was in the room. She was talking my ear off about Pretty Little Liars, One Direction, etc., etc. A lot of things I just didn't really care about. But then again, she had no one to talk to, and the situation was complicated. I just listened and nodded my head. Over the course of about 2 weeks, give or take, I had walked her down to the dining hall maybe 4 or 5 times. She may have been a victim of assault, but she was also very annoying and unappealing. For God's sake, she actually talked about herself in the third person. Her story about the assault became inconsistent, and there was always new major developments about what happened, and then the story changed to something much more drastic and severe. It went from assault to bringing in a gang to do the same thing to her. Then, she made a comment one day along the lines of how she wished that someone would drop a bomb and kill all the people of the race of the assailant so that they could stop. It made me immediately uncomfortable and unsettled. I didn't want to walk her or interact with her anymore. The week of Thanksgiving reprieve, I went back home to visit my family, while Popcorn stayed on campus. During that week, I had 60 missed phone calls from Popcorn, One day, I even had 20 calls within the span of a couple of hours. No normal person does that. Red flags were definitely raising, if they hadn't been already. When I got back to campus, there was a knock on my door, and sure enough it was Popcorn crying again. She tells me that because I wasn't on campus to protect her, she had been assaulted by another guy while walking to Panera Bread, and the Filipino RA groped and slapped her. If red flags were being raised, then this was on full sirens. I'm no apologist by any means when it comes to sexual assault, but the ratio of sexual assault was incredibly high, especially since these 3 incidents happened within a month's time frame, all by people of colour, seemingly at random. She was making up these stories to elicit some sick form of sympathy, and as an actual victim of assault, I was beyond offended. I told her I had to leave for class, and ran the hell away from her to my friend to ask for advice. It got really crazy really fast. I warned the RA officers about her, and they told me that they would talk to her. During class, I had up to 100+ missed phone calls and a series of individual messages that just said, "Hi." I was done with this. I wanted nothing to do with her. I blocked her number and went back to my dorm. That week after classes, I just went straight to my dorm. I didn't want to see her. One day I had to go to the bathroom, so I walked to the stall to do my business. I'm just casually in there peeing with my pants around my ankles when Popcorn literally crawls on the bathroom floor and claps her head underneath the stall and says, "Ha! I knew you would eventually come out." I am freaked the hell out and nearly in tears. I tell her I am wickedly busy and I don't have time for her, and that I was upset for her invading my privacy. That took a lot of courage to do, because I was struggling deeply with confrontation. She tells me about how she is thinking of dying because her mum died when she was young. Some manipulative shit that I was just not in the mood for. I leave her in the bathroom and go to my room and lock the door. I watch some YouTube and take a nap, when I was rudely awoken, not by knocking, but by pounding on my door. I didn't answer, and the pounding continued and got louder and louder. "Open this door, or I am going to kill you. Open the door, or I will kill you." It went on and on. She just waited outside my dorm singing songs into the door cracks for an hour. I was so scared I just cried and called my dad to pick me up from school. I didn't have many friends that lived on campus, since it was a small college and lots of people commuted, and this whole situation just made me feel isolated. My mental health was deteriorating rapidly. The RAs had been informed of the threats made at my door by other students observing what happened, and she was given a warning, but that was all. One night, I had my boyfriend, who lived 3 hours away at this time, come and spend the night at college. We'd been watching a movie, and now we're napping on my bed, when all we hear is the door open. Like an idiot, I had completely spaced out and forgotten to lock the door. Popcorn comes running in and jumped on top of us, saying in a baby voice, "Popcorn wants cuddles." I was beyond creeped out and was basically screaming. My boyfriend, being the no-nonsense confrontational person he is, told her to get the absolute hell out of my room. She told him that she would, and I quote, "just go and die like her mother did when she was 3, and inject cancer into herself." My boyfriend smiled and said, "Good," and then pushed her out of the room and slammed the door, giving 0 shits. I swear he almost slammed her fingers shut. I love him. We reported her to the campus police in the morning, and still nothing major came of it. That was until there was another popcorn fire in her dorm, and not too far after, she got kicked out. I wish that's where the story would end. But with her, unfortunately, no. After she left the dorms, my resident life became a lot easier. I made a lot of new normal friends, and I was feeling a lot less anxious. One day, a girl in one of my classes invites me to go to the mall with her to go get our nails done. Now, this nail salon had clear glass, so you could see the rest of the outside mall when you were getting your nails done. I am all relaxed, when all of a sudden, I see Popcorn's face pressed up against the glass of the nail salon, and she is with a morbidly obese neckbeard. I'm getting my nails done, and she's literally staring at me through the window for a good 10 minutes with this man. To say that I was unnerved was an understatement. I told my friend what was going on, and we booked it out of there, and they tried hard to follow. In retrospect, that is when I should have called the real police. After the mall, I had a bunch of random friend requests from profiles with a small Yorkie dog as the profile picture, and several message requests. I opened them, and they were all from Popcorn, asking for me to be her bridesmaid at a Pizza Hut wedding that her and her fiancé were having in 2 years. You can't even make this shit up. There was another message about how she was so upset that I didn't acknowledge her at the mall, and she had waited so long to introduce me to her doting fiancé, and she was so upset that she wanted to wring my neck. Of course, I blocked all those profiles, and things were pretty silent. I've been living with my boyfriend and going to school in Rhode Island for 2 years currently. I'm loving school and have an excellent group of friends. About 5 months ago, I had got homework and I had 3 missed calls from a random New Hampshire number. Thinking it was one of my family members, I called back, and nope, it was Popcorn on the other end. I immediately hung up. There was also a voicemail left that was just a person breathing into the phone and telling me that I was expected at the wedding. I cried and called the police urgently about the number. I don't know what happened or if anything did come of it, but I haven't been bothered since. I'm a very kind person, and people often take advantage of my openness. It really is a fatal flaw that I am working really hard on. It's unfortunate that there are so many unhinged and lonely people, but we really shouldn't make it our burden to help them. Sometimes being nice actually causes a lot of mental strain. To Popcorn, let's not meet again. In the summer of 2015, I worked at a university in a small southern town. I lived a few miles away from campus in a 2-bedroom house with a roommate, and my schedule was pretty rigid. Same routine every day. I went to class in the morning, work in the afternoon, and got home at around 9 p.m. One Thursday night, I arrived home at the usual time and noticed that there was an old pickup truck idling at the yield sign across the street from my house. I didn't know the make or model, but it was beat up. Peeling paint, rust, dents. It looked really out of place in our neighborhood. Most people there drove nice modern cars, so this thing stood out like a sore thumb. The streets were deserted. It clearly wasn't waiting for other cars to pass. I thought maybe the driver was just texting or something, but since my roommate wasn't home yet, I didn't want to leave the safety of my own vehicle. I'm a petite woman who doesn't carry pepper spray anymore, so I tried to be aware of my surroundings. I pulled into my driveway and just sat there, staring at the truck and waiting for it to leave. Eventually it did. It pulled away slowly, and made its way back out of the neighborhood towards the main road. When it was out of sight, I went inside, locked the door behind me, and made myself some dinner. By 11 p.m, my roommate still hadn't come home, and I was folding laundry and listening to podcasts in my bedroom. I'd forgotten all about the truck. Suddenly the lights went out. That spooked me, because normally our power didn't shut off unless there was bad weather. That night was clear as a bell, so I immediately called my roommate and asked where he was. He told me he was already on his way home, and that he would be there in about 5 minutes. Relieved, I just told him to step on it, and hung up. No reason to freak out about a power outage, right? He'd be there soon enough, and then we could figure it out together. I walked into the living room to wait for him. Our front door had a little diamond-shaped window in it, which I've always hated. I stood on my tiptoes and looked out to see if our neighbour's power was out as well. I was surprised to see that it was not. Even the street light near our front yard was still on. Weird. Had I somehow blown a fuse? Just as I considered making a trip to the basement to reset the breakers, I received a text message from my mum. I don't remember what it was about, but it only took me a few seconds to answer it. After I did, I looked out the window again. To my utter shock and surprise, there was a man standing under the streetlight. He hadn't been there before, and I instantly got a bad feeling. He was a middle-aged man, and about 6 feet tall, with a potbelly and little round glasses, unkempt hair, old sneakers. His white t-shirt and blue jeans were filthy. He looked like he'd been working on a car or something. He was mechanic dirty, you know? And he had this awful, smug expression on his face. I had never seen him before. Still in shock at actually seeing someone out there, I didn't move. Luckily, he couldn't see me, because the inside of my house was pitch black. But to my absolute horror, he was heading straight towards me. Not walking quickly or with purpose, just kind of casually shuffling towards the house. If someone else were to pass by, they probably wouldn't realize what he was up to. He even glanced around a few times, as if to make sure nobody else was watching. Inch by inch. He made his way into the yard. This guy was coming to get me. I was sure of it. I started to shake. I think it's worth mentioning that my dog is very people-oriented, and he usually goes bananas when he hears something outside. This time it was silent. He had no idea there was a man approaching, even though I was staring at him through the window. When the man was about halfway to the porch, my roommate's car finally rounded the bend and turned onto our street. As soon as those headlights lit him up, the man turned and looked and recognized the approaching vehicle. My roommate and I both saw his face. He recognized that car. In his haste to get away from the house, he nearly stepped in front of it and got run over. My roommate swerved into the driveway, scrambled out, and charged into the house. He didn't even speak to me. He just grabbed the axe out of our utility closet and went back outside to confront the man. But he was gone. We called the police and the power company, and they both sent someone to check things out. The police didn't find anything. The repairman reset the box on the pole near our house. Apparently, the switch had been flipped, which is why only our house had no electricity. I asked the repairman if there was any way that a person could have been responsible for that, but he didn't give me a straight answer. The following day, we went on a camping trip that lasted all weekend. If the men came back, we would never know. And after that I refused to be home alone if my roommate wasn't around when I got off work. I killed time at a local bar until he got back, and we both moved away soon after. I never saw the man or the truck again, but sometimes I wonder, how long had he been watching our house and stalking me? And what might have happened if my roommate hadn't been on his way home that night? So this happened when I was in college. I would often use the computer labs on campus because at the time I didn't have my own computer, and a lot of my assignments involved some sort of electronic component. And then I would hang out there or other areas of campus because I didn't really have many friends other than the few I had made there, so I would hang out with them and such. Sometimes I would be there kind of late because I also tutored, so it wasn't uncommon for me to be there after dark. During college, I kind of came out of my shell a bit and was more inclined to talk to people I didn't know. One day in the computer lab, I was working on my latest story, as I've been writing since I was 11, which happened to be a horror story. This one kid, whose name I never did get, sat down next to me, even though the lab only had a few people in it. I didn't think too much of it, especially when this guy started talking to me. He was actually being kind of flirty, which is, usually, flattering. So I figured he just thought I was cute or something. He really wasn't my type. For one thing, I hadn't realized that I liked guys yet. For another, he was kind of emo. That was when emoism was big, and I wasn't really into that anyway. But you don't have to be attracted to someone to talk to them. So I was nice and chatted with him a bit, even though I really wanted to write. Eventually this guy asked me what I was working on, and I told him. He thought it was super cool, and said he was a writer too, and that piqued my interest, because I don't know a lot of writers. So I asked him what he wrote, and he said it was predominantly horror as well. He told me that he was writing a story with his friends in it. That would be a slasher, like Scream. Well, those are interesting to me, and I didn't think much of his friends being in it until he said, I just really wanted to write a story where my friends are like brutally murdered or whatever. That was verbatim. I remember it very clearly. Well, that was super weird, and he got even weirder when he asked if I wanted to read. I kind of waffled a bit about how not wanting to be rude, and then I made an excuse to leave when he got kind of intense about it. Later that night, I was home and got a friend request from someone I didn't know. That was during the MySpace era, and this guy's URL and name on the site were bloodchow666. I knew right away who it was, even before I went to his profile. I was surprised that it wasn't weirder, so I wanted to be polite and accepted his request. That was a mistake. He began sending me parts of his story, and dear God, it was even worse than it sounded when he told me about it. Not only were his friends getting killed, he was writing them in extremely sexual scenarios, and the death scenes were very, very violent. I wanted to stop reading, but my friend Ashley, who'd been in the room when I met this guy, wanted to keep reading it, so I did with her. We were basically WTFing the entire time, because holy shit, it was weird and morbid and dark, and made me extremely uncomfortable. I deleted him eventually from MySpace, and then blocked him, not wanting to talk to him again. Well, this guy wouldn't let go. He found me alone on campus, wanting to know why I deleted my MySpace, which is what I told him. And I was worried about what he'd do if he found out the truth. He became very insistent that I keep reading his stories, and he kept following me around, trying to give me pages. I debated telling someone, but I was young and naive, and thought maybe he was just being lonely. However, he was really starting to scare me, especially when he'd find me alone in the parking lot at night. More than once, I had to quickly get into my car and lock the door right away. He didn't exactly chase me, but he may as well have. And then, just as suddenly as it started, it ended. I never saw or heard from him again, and I think perhaps he dropped out. At the time, I was dealing with a different stalker situation, so I didn't question it. I was just grateful. I recently started a new job that I absolutely love. I'm a daytime caretaker for an older special needs gentleman. Basically, I pick him up in the mornings and proceed to take him wherever he needs or wants to go during the day. He likes to keep a daily schedule, and that schedule includes us going to the mall every weekday morning at 10 for at least 3 hours, so that he can walk laps and socialize with the vendors and the other mall patrons. I've been doing this job for just under a month, and within the past week and a half, I've had some increasingly creepy encounters with one specific custodian that works at the mall. I'm not required to stay with my client while we're at the mall, seeing as he is still very independent and capable of doing everything on his own. So last week, Wednesday or Thursday I believe, I was walking around and trying to kill time, while he walked laps and got his exercise in. I happened to walk past a custodian who smiled and waved at me. I returned the gesture, just as I would have done with anyone who went out of their way to greet me politely. Little did I know, he was apparently going to take this as an invitation. The next day, I ran into the same custodian. I'm not sure if we just happened to be walking in the same direction, and I didn't notice him at first, which seems more and more unlikely as time goes on, or if he saw me and intentionally started walking in the same direction I was going. Either way, he began matching pace with me and asked me how my day had been so far. I replied with a "fine, thanks," and tried to keep on my way. He made a couple of other comments about it being a nice day, while staring directly at me long enough for it to get weird, and smiled this gigantic smile. Eventually he had to say goodbye to me, and turned down a service hallway. After that, I had a few days off from work, and I didn't go to the mall during those days. And so, the slightly strange custodian didn't cross my mind again until this past Tuesday, when I went back to work. I picked my client up in the morning, and we drove to the mall as per usual. He approached me again while I was walking, and kept making comments about how pretty I am, and how he just had to come over and make those dimples pop out. I ignored him, save for an uncomfortable laugh that I couldn't hold back. He just continued and kept calling me beautiful and a real cutie pie. By the time he decided to carry on with his own business, I was thoroughly creeped out. Fast forward to yesterday. It was basically just a bunch of the same weird compliments, but this time he was also adamant about asking me a bunch of questions, like why I've been to the mall so much lately, and what I like to do when I'm there, which I didn't give him any answers to. Eventually, he just went away. Then today. Today has to be the day that he made me feel creeped out the most. I was walking past the food court when he found me yet again. This time I saw him staring at me from afar. When he saw that I could see him, he made an effort to walk past me and say hello, which I promptly ignored, then tried to hurry to the other, more out-of-the-way side of the mall, where I meet my client when he's ready to go home, and hopefully avoid any more contact with creepy custodian dude for the day. Of course it didn't work. When I got to the seating area where I wait for my client, he was surprisingly already there. He told me that he wanted to sit for a while before we left, so I sat in the armchair next to him and we talked for a while. Now keep in mind, this isn't even 20 minutes after my first encounter of the day with the custodian. I look up, and guess who's walking straight towards me with that same huge smile and stare? The custodian, of course. This time, he positions himself right in front of the chair I was sitting in, which made me super uncomfortable because I couldn't get up and walk away like I had every other time I bumped into him. He stood there staring and smiling and said something that made my hair stand on end. "You need to stop moving around so much." I didn't respond and didn't look at him. I just wanted him to go away. He tried asking me more questions about why I was at the mall so often and when I worked, and even if I lived around the mall. I didn't give him any answers and just said I needed to leave. He moved, but not before saying again how cute I was and that he would see me tomorrow. Needless to say, I am thoroughly creeped out. I'd like to go to mall security, but I don't know the man's name, as the custodians don't wear name tags, and even if I were able to describe him well enough for them to figure out who I'm talking about, I have no idea what action they'd even be able to take. I'm trying to take every precaution I can, and I've told friends about what's happening. But beyond that, I'm at a loss. I can't change my client's schedule, so I do have to be at the mall every morning at a predictable time, which I'm sure is only making it easier for this guy to find me if he wants to. If anyone has gone through anything similar, I'd love to hear how you guys resolved it. Also, update. Ever since talking about this, I haven't seen the creepy custodian dude. This may be because I've been spending more time inside stores like Starbucks or Barnes & Nobles, where I can sit and not be bothered, as opposed to sitting out in the open at any of the seating areas in the middle of the mall or food court. Whatever the reason, I've been able to relax a bit and enjoy the time that I have to be at the mall, instead of being on edge and looking out for any creepy janitors who want to harass me. This happened a couple of weeks into my freshman year at college, and there are still some things that I have never figured out. It was 2002, so I was still using my AIM as my main way to chat with people. That said, my AIM username wasn't published anywhere tied to my actual name. Now in college, we get a lookbook with pictures and a short summary of everyone in our year. It'll show proposed majors, hometowns, dorm extension phone numbers, and it does not give your AIM or where you live. Well, so I'm a lesbian freshman from Texas at a small liberal arts/Ivy college, so I'm far from home, but nestled in a pretty tight-knit supportive community. Boy, did that come around to bite me in the ass quickly. So before college, I came out on a show. Back then, way less gays or something. I don't know. And anyway, I was getting recognized. So one day on AIM, I get a chat request from a user I don't know. That was odd, because it happens sometimes, and it could have just been a new friend or something. But no one at my college had AIM. So, I had just started, and was always kind of a loner. This person claimed to be a friend of a friend of a friend from home, and fan of the show, and I thought it was weird she found my AIM, but I didn't look much into it. She basically started out friendly, and even seemingly into me. I wasn't into her. I didn't know this random person, and I had a girlfriend. I tried to let her down gently, but every time I did she would go off on religious rants about how she isn't gay, and I'm going to hell for being gay, and she wants to save me. She would go off on these crazy rants, delete her SN, and come back with a new one. Try to be sweet, and the psycho would start all over. This happened a few times. I thought she was sad, bored, and a closeted troll. So at this point I'm basically ignoring her random usernames and incoming messages. There are several a day. She was crying on her own, now being sweet with kissy faces, angered at no replies, and ranting about me burning in hell. Then suddenly new screen name. I just ignored when it popped up. She finally got sick of being ignored, and one day tells me, I know XYZ, what I wore that day, and the way I walk. All these obsessive little details and judgments about myself, where I eat, my routine, the classes I'm taking. She then drops the bombshell that she is actually a student at my school, on campus, and of my year. We had the same admissions counselor, same advisor, and she told me her name, and I ran to the lookbook to see who this psycho was. I was terrified when I saw her photo. Not to judge a book by its cover, but she looked like the lady that killed Selena. Suddenly, I couldn't just block or ignore her. Not fully. She was literally in my circle, by no choice of my own. After she revealed who she truly was, her rants got a little less crazy. Way less burning in hell talk, thankfully. But now I'd meet people and they'd go, "Oh, Selena Killer was talking to you. Man, she's a great person. You guys are close. I'm so glad." Anyway, them saying how amazing she was and how lucky I am to have found such a cool friend. Always. I don't know how to react. I wanted people to like me. And to go around screaming week 3 of college that Selena Killer is crazy and she's stalking me just makes me sound crazy. Especially since there's this weird false comfort of being a predetermined and pre-selected group. It's this idea that people have been vetted or something. I don't know, it's hard to explain. Suffice to me calling her out about this, our peers wouldn't have exactly pegged me as someone who fostered a sense of community. I asked her how she got my username and why she was watching me. She told me that she got it from the flipbook, not possible, and that she wasn't watching, it was just a small school, which it's not, and that I sure think highly of myself. So now I'm thinking maybe I'm just being arrogant and paranoid. One day, at 2 a.m, my phone rings. It doesn't stop. Dorm phone, so no answering machine. I finally answer, annoyed, and it's the girl. I'm freaking out and she casually goes, "Hey, I'm on my way." What? Apartment 420, right? That's your dorm room, right? I flip. "Do not come here," I yell down the phone, and hang up. It continued to ring, and I freaked out so much I unplugged it from the socket on the wall. I think she got my dorm from stalking me, but how she got my AIM I still don't know. No one had it on campus at that point, and I searched everywhere for any connection of my name to my username, and found nothing. And I don't know when she saw me, and put me together with the show, and exactly when or how her obsession started. She continued to be a psycho for all 4 years. I mean, maybe I overreacted, but I was far from home, and only in my first couple of weeks at school. First time adulthood and all that, and suddenly I was always looking over my shoulder. She did eventually come out in her sophomore year. Shocker. She then dated my very best friend, who wasn't even gay before, and she called me up one day saying they both wanted to take a little road trip to my hometown in Texas while I was visiting my family. I got so creeped out, because the creepy little girl just wanted to get off on seeing my family and where I live and stuff. I strongly suggest to my best friend, who knows the history and how I'm afraid of her, that I'm not comfortable with it. She assures me that it's totally fine, and that this girl isn't a creep. I tried to cancel several different ways, but it wasn't happening. At one point, they said if they could just crash at my family's house, or if I just wasn't there, they were just gonna make the 11-hour trip each way, drive there anyway, just to, do a road trip and see my town, the one I grew up in. My hometown is a shithole, mind you. Well, the creepy girl stayed at my home. My dad barbecued for them. She had such a smug look of satisfaction on her face. Then I realized she stopped being obsessed with me a long time ago, and now just enjoyed making me uneasy and rubbing our connections in my face. They eventually broke up. She isn't a best friend anymore, and I genuinely hope to never see the creepy little woman ever again. And if people could stop saying how awesome she is, that'd be great. This happened in around 2004 or 5, when I was 14 or 15. I had a paper round, and part of the round included a small path by the side of the local high school. It wasn't very well used or lit, but it cut at least 20 minutes off my route. Not a problem in summer, but autumn/winter, it was going to be dark by 4, so I just used to run up there really quick, as I could get back on the main road where it's more well lit. I did this for a year without incident, so I never really felt bothered by this, until one day, I see this guy by the path's entrance. He was tall and skinny, bald, and his eyes were quite sunken. He gave me the creeps, but he never said anything to me, so I didn't think much of it. I ran up the path to the main road and carried on with my route as usual. A few days later I saw him again, coming out of the house that is on the same street as the path entrance. So again I didn't really think much of it, and just carried on. After that, I used to see him all the time skulking around. Whatever time I went out to do my route, he'd be there, morning and night. It really bothered me, but I didn't tell anyone because I didn't want him to think I was exaggerating. The final straw was one day when he started following me, so I started to run, and so did he. Luckily, I managed to knock on someone's door who saw how distraught I was, who let me in to calm down. I phoned my dad, who came to pick me up, and we drove down the road that he lived on. I pointed his house out, so my dad went and knocked on the door and asked what the hell he thought he was playing at. He answered the door, saw my dad, and bolted. My dad, to those who don't know him, would see him as very intimidating, because he's tall, well-built, has tattoos, a bald head and a beard. My dad chased after him up the pathway, where he liked to stalk me, and when he never came back a few minutes later, he got back in the car and told me that he would never bother me again. I don't know what happened when my dad caught up to him, but thanks to my dad, I never had to cross paths with my stalker again. Hey guys, it's Mort here, and thank you so much for listening. I seriously am really grateful to everyone who leaves a comment. I just want to hit that 1,000. Just once. I'm sorry if it's getting boring for you guys. Maybe this time though. Then I won't have to ask again. But it is just really nice, all these comments we're getting. If you like the video, as always, please drop a like. If you're new here, subscribe and press the little bell icon to be notified of your nightly spooks, as they come in every night. If there's a story that you would like to share, feel free to send it to my email, or alternatively, post it to my Reddit. Either are fine. But anyway, for now guys, I'm gonna sign off. Stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.